Bom dia a todas e todos. Dando continuidade às atividades do terceiro Seminário Internacional de Lesson Study no Ensino de Matemática, SILSEM, teremos agora a mesa redonda 4 do Lesson Study no Ensino de Matemática, Pesquisas na América do Norte, com os distintos convidados professor Makoto Yoshida e Miss Naomi Ishida. E eu, Yuriko Yamamoto Paudin, serei a moderadora e tradutora. Agradeço à comissão organizadora do evento pelo privilégio de coordenar esta mesa, que conclui a série de mesas redondas que contribuem para o terceiro SILSEM. As apresentações traduzidas foram enviadas aos participantes por e-mail, assim vocês poderão acompanhar os slides, as apresentações. I will briefly introduce the distinguished guests of this roundtable and outline its purposes in Portuguese. É com grande prazer que apresento os palestrantes desta mesa. O primeiro palestrante é o Dr. Makoto Yoshida, que teve seu doutorado pela Universidade de Chicago, com a primeira tese nos Estados Unidos sobre a Lesson Study, constituindo um trabalho acadêmico pioneiro na introdução de Lesson Study nos Estados Unidos, na época em que Catherine Lewis também trabalhava nas primeiras implementações da Lesson Study nos Estados Unidos. O trabalho do Dr. Yoshida resultou no livro com Fernandes, e que foi referenciado na obra de Stigler e Hilbert, que foi fundamental para difundir a Lesson Study para os Estados Unidos e outros países fora do Japão. Dr. Yoshida é atualmente consultor da East West Mass, uma organização que trabalha na difusão da Lesson Study. Ele é o diretor de desenvolvimento profissional na empresa. Ele ajuda professores de matemática do ensino fundamental e médio a melhorar seu conhecimento de conteúdo e a instrução e aprendizado em sala de aula. Ele promove e realiza a Lesson Study, conduzindo inúmeros workshops e apresentações sobre esses assuntos. Ele é considerado um dos principais pesquisadores e educadores de Lesson Study nos Estados Unidos, com muitas publicações acadêmicas também. Ele desenvolve livros de matemática elementar dos anos iniciais, sendo recentemente a sua coleção traduzida para português em parceria com Enjoy Math, uma empresa brasileira. Os convidados de hoje são especiais, no sentido de poder ouvir a experiência de dois educadores nascidos no Japão, conhecedores da Lesson Study japonesa, e trabalhando na difusão e implementação da Lesson Study na cultura americana. Neste sentido, a segunda palestrante, Miss Naomi Ishida, traz a visão atual do grupo de Lesson Study liderado por ela no seu local de trabalho em Nova York. A senhora Ishida iniciou sua carreira em salas de aula do ensino fundamental no Japão e continua nos Estados Unidos. Ela tem 2 títulos de mestrado em educação, um no Japão com bolsa integral do Ministério da Educação e o segundo título, após mudar-se para os Estados Unidos, com bolsa do estado de New York. Atualmente, ocupa o cargo de diretora da Singapore Math, é uma escola urbana na cidade de Nova York, implementando a Lesson Study escolar como fundadora do programa de matemática da Rosalind Charter School. Ela apresenta regularmente em eventos nacionais, como os workshops da NCTM, e internacionais sobre Lesson Study como WALS. Então, a mesa de hoje traz 2 apresentações interligadas, sob a perspectiva de um precursor acadêmico na introdução da Lesson Study nos Estados Unidos, e a outra de uma experiência em andamento do grupo na escola americana, ambos profundos conhecedores do Japão e das diferenças num país culturalmente diferentes. Passamos a palavra para a doutora Yoshida. As perguntas podem ser enviadas por chat, e a professora Aluska irá nos ajudar com a tradução e seleção das perguntas que poderão ser respondidas no final das 2 apresentações. I invite Dr. Yoshida to deliver his talk. Pode colocar a slide, por favor.
Hello, everybody. This is Makoto Yoshida, and I've been working in lesson study in the US for 25 years. And I think you will see the slides. Okay. So my title of the presentation is Considerations for Conducting Productive Lesson Study and Learning from the Experience from the US Schools. And I have been working for US for the 25 years, and mostly in the area of East Coast, which is the New Jersey and the New York areas. Next, please. Okay, so here's a brief history of lesson study in the U.S., particularly focused on the East Coast side. But in the U.S., there are many events occurred in education. And NCTM standard of mathematics, is introduced in 2000. And then after that, and there are many other events occur. So for instance, No Child Left Behind Act, which is actually focusing on we have to improve teaching and learning. And at that time, very influential text comes, and that's called the Adding It Up. And then that's introduced important concept that you need to students need to have, or teaching we need to focus on. I will talk about that a little bit more. And then the powerful design of professional learning, and then that leads to the PLC. I'm sure that many people knows about the PLC and professional learning communities. And then state testing started in the United States, and Common Core State Standard, which is really enforced all the United States, all the states to follow this Common Core State Standard. And also, to improve practice, there is a document called the 5 Practice for orchestrating productive mathematical discussion was published. And also around time, Math in Focus, which is a Singapore-based textbooks, came out. And based on using those in the New York area, the Engage New York Math, and that's the program the textbook is produced, which is the standard-based, and then with the Singapore idea. And then 2014, not only just to continue to do the testing, but also Common Core State Standard was incorporated into, and then also the accountability, which is the teachers need to have teachers are also assessed by this test, student performance. And then, of course, we have this major thing. So the COVID happens, and then 2 years the schools are closed, and then school opened again 2020. And then during that time, lesson study was started from around the 2000, and then the schools started to work on lesson study. In the East-West Coast side, there is a school called Patterson School Number 2, and then also New York Japanese School. They collaborated, and then started to do some open house type of lesson study, so that the people can be able to see the lesson and also learn about the lesson study. And also at the same time, around 2000, many schools started to work on lesson study, and but a lot of people couldn't learn, so the participating in the open house at the Patterson School Number 2, and then New York Japanese School really helped the teachers to see what is a research lesson look like, as well as how to conduct the lesson study. And around the 2003, there's many documents started to come in, and educating teachers to learn about teaching through problem solving, and Kyosai Kenkyu, which is like study of instructional materials, and the importance of knowledgeable others, which is the people who actually help to facilitate lesson study. And Also, because the teachers need to learn more about it, so the annual lesson study immersion program, which is like a teacher goes to Japan for about 2 weeks to learn lesson study. And also to help students to teachers to do Kyosai Kenkyu, and the Japanese textbook was translated in 2006, and it was used for planning the lessons. And then collaborative lesson research 2016 was introduced, which is Dr. Takahashi in Chicago. He actually thought that the lesson study need to be more in the school-based. Next slide, please. So the five interrated standards for mathematical proficiency. So this is the five things that are really important. So conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, strategic competence, adaptive reasoning, productive design. And these things need to be emphasized for teaching, and that's really the vision of the teaching. And that was actually introduced in the United States. Next slide, please. And so now everybody also talk about this 21st century skills, deep conceptual understanding of content and procedures, active learning through interactions with classmates by presenting and discussing ideas, developing communication skills, critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, and attitude for learning. And these are really important. However, these things are not really incorporated into the lesson study, unfortunately, in this area, New York, and then New Jersey area. Next slide, please. So what is a powerful model of lesson study? And that's actually originally from in Japan, and then many documents that we studied before is introduced based on the school-based lesson study. And that is actually most of the schools are conducting and part of the school-based professional development. And it is really truly the developing a professional learning community, and that helps to gradual improvement of teaching over time, which is actually used. The phrase was introduced by the Stiglitz and Hebert. And teaching through problem solving is the characteristic of teaching in Japan, and that is also illustrated in the Stiglitz and Hebert book too. And so there was a little confusion about that. Lesson study equal teaching through problem solving. Well, it is in Japan, it is true. But a lot of the time in the US, lesson study is a form of professional development, and then teaching through problem solving wasn't really, how can I say, considered well to develop the lesson. In Japan, of course, the teaching through problem solving really helped to develop the textbooks, and then that actually illustrate how the textbook is illustrating the Japanese textbook. And so the textbook, if you see that, you will see how you can be able to do the teaching through problem solving in the classrooms. And through this, and in Japan, really developed this idea of teach less and learn more. Next slide, please. So teaching through problem solving. And this is really illustrated in like one problem, and the students are actually engaging problem solving. And the students learn complex mathematical knowledge and skills through interaction. So students actually talk to each other, present and talk to each other, discussing, and then deepen their understanding. often at the end of the lesson, they're generalizing ideas. And this is actually because this is presenting, discussing, analyzing what they're learning, generalizing. So this teaching process is really contributing, developing a teaching through students' 21st century skills. Next slide, please. This is actually coming from the Dr. Takahashi's book, but it is kind of hard to see. But the vertical measure is the team's test scores in 2003, and then the horizontal measurement is how much percentage of the team's identified topics are taught. So if you're looking at this, for instance, Singapore, they teach 82% of the topics, and then they get high score of 594. If you're looking at Japan, they only taught 54% of the topics, but still managed to higher score 565. So if you look at the United States, they also taught as much as Singapore examples, but their test score was lower. So this is actually tells that how this teaching, teach less, learn more, teach something deeply, and then nurturing problem-solving skills help them to be able to achieve in higher test scores. Next slide, please. And this is eighth grade data, but it is also showing the similar trend in the eighth grade also. Next slide, please. So what is very important things we need to pay attention to, what we learned in 25 years of experience in the United States, is the first thing is having a vision. The goal of a mathematics education in schools and district. What is our goal? Well, the people might say, we want to have kids to have a 21st century skills. But some school might be talking about getting higher test score. So really need to know what is the vision we want to do. 21st century skills is not the bullet of a list that you want to show to people. You want to really achieve in the schools. So if that's the vision, you really need to be able to talk about that and discuss, and then making agreement that we want to strive for that as a goal. And then establish the goal, and to do this, what we need to discuss what need to be improved to achieve the goal. So instruction or professional development, textbooks, and so on. There are a lot of things we can be able to discuss. Next slide, please. And so now we have a vision, but we really need to think about what is the good lesson, the instruction we need to use so that we can be able to achieve. So there are a lot of videotaped lessons on the website or some places. We need to really know ourselves what is really important to achieve the goal, the vision of education through designing the lessons that actually we can use for every day. In the Japanese case, was a teaching through problem solving, and learn something deep by students collaborating, presenting, and then discussing, and then generalizing ideas. And that is really the important things they wanted to actually do through this teaching through problem solving. So, and then also we also need to consider what instructional materials support this. So we need to really choose. So we have to have a vision of what we want to achieve in math education. And second, we need to think about this vision of what kind of mathematical instruction we need. If we don't have this, it is very difficult to do very productive lesson study. Next slide, please. To do Japanese type of teaching through problem solving, and one of the things that we use in the particularly in the New York and the New Jersey area is this document that produced by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics in the United States, and it's called 5 Practices for Orchestrating Productive Mathematics Discussions. And then this is just 5 practice. So anticipating. So if you have a problem, you need to anticipate what the student might do, a different way to solve the problem, or what kind of mistakes, common mistakes they have. And then listing and then try to sort of like anticipate what might happen in the classroom. And when you teach, monitor students, not walking around and teach students individually. Monitoring means the actually using the list of the anticipating things to actually walk around and see what students are doing, what type of solutions, what kind of things they are having a problem with. Then we have to think about the decision, which one ideas you want to bring into the classroom. So selecting by monitoring, and then ask students to think about present. But to do presentation, we need to think about the sequencing. A lot of the time, we might get just like students who did the problem and then ask that person to present. But that is not really help them to do this through discussion. So we need to think about the sequence. Maybe the more primitive solution method to the more sophisticated things, or at the end, maybe out-of-box ideas and things like that. And each solution need to be discussed, understood, and so that they can also engage in discussion for something like which one is a more effective way to solve the problem, what are the most essence of how solving this problem. And then that is the part of connecting and different type of solutions we need to connect together and then ending a lesson. And so it's not the show and tell of each student's or the ideas, but we need to use that to discuss. So in a sense, in order to develop the lesson, presentation discussion is a really important part of the lesson, and which is actually follow the Vygotsky's idea of sociocultural theory, which is actually that students learn things each other. Next slide, please. So now we have this. So what are the choices of a professional development? And we are using lesson study, but I hope that that is really the true lesson study you want to do. Or in order to develop the classroom teaching and learning, we have to engage in lesson study, because lesson study open the door to look at the classroom teaching where a teacher teaches and the students learn. So we think that this is the best way of the professional development. And the 21st century skills or your vision need to be achieved by school as a whole. So school-based lesson study is the most powerful way to do this. The other thing is also lacking in the United States, and we are still struggling, is working with knowledgeable others. So the people who are knowledgeable with lesson study or mathematical content, and also mathematical learning of the students, pedagogy. And so we need to actually have this kind of knowledgeable person to participate in professional learning community, which is lesson study community, and help them to enhance their learning through this. So that this person is very important to level up the quality of lesson study. Next slide, please. So now also we need to develop a good system within the schools. This is also the very difficult to do because a lot of the time in the United States, the teachers don't have a time to do lesson study or meetings. So really need to get the support from administrators to create a time to do lesson study. Also, the administrator need to have a vision of sustaining the system because we do one time as a project doesn't mean that we can be able to change the practice because the um, lesson or instruction is the cultural activities. That is something that is very difficult to change. So we have to look at the really long-term gradual changes. And the administrator need to support that type of professional development. And we also need to appoint the leader to facilitate lesson study. And or establish a committee members so that those can be actually lead, make sure that happen. School is a busy place, so you may have only few hours to be able to engage in something like a professional development. If that's the case, we have to use those time well. That means that somebody need to make a schedule and agenda so that we can be able to use that time well to do this. And of course, we need to always reflect, monitor progress of the lesson study. Next slide, please. So another thing is conducting productive lesson study. We need to, as a community, we need to know that learning is the key to sustain lesson study. Everybody need to think that what can we learn from this? How much to learn from this? If we have a learning opportunity and then you learned a lot, and that is actually develop teachers' motivations to want to do well or continue to the lesson study. So we have to keep in mind what kind of learning are we actually nurturing through lesson study. So to do this, focus on developing content and pedagogical knowledge through planning. And then when you do planning, make sure to do the kyosai kenkyu, study of instructional materials, and then learn and develop more knowledge about the content. And then use 5 practice. That's really the form of how to engage students in discussions. And so use that to support like a teaching through problem solving or problem centered type of teaching. And then make sure that having a good enough time to observe the lesson and discuss. And then often the discussion time is so short and we can't really produce the good learning. So the observation and post-lesson discussion, we need to make sure that we need to take a time to discuss. And then after that, we should need to record what we learned so that we don't need to forget. And then the other thing is when you have a discussion, we need to make sure that connecting to the original goal, the vision of the goal. A lot of time I see in the lesson study in the U.S. is the even have the goal include the 21st century skills, but the lesson discussion is if they understand the particular content, for instance, fractions. So we really need to think about the connecting. And also through this, we need to nurture teachers as researchers. They are doing this lesson study help them to improve their teaching through the research. So they have to actually go to outside and look for research papers or books and then try to gain more knowledge. And that doesn't need to be you need to learn a lot of things, but let's say you can, if you want to improve the teaching in fractions, and then this year focus on that, and then do research on what a different way to teach lesson instead of just following the textbook. Next slide, please. So this is actually Dr. Takashi Nakamura, and he's my, the professor that I had a friend with and admired, and he talks about the lesson study. And the primary purpose is to solve educational problems by developing a new curricula and instructional approaches. So this will help to change. And then this will also help to national policy and then a bridge between the classroom teaching. And to enable practitioners to examine and improve their practice. So you might do once or twice, but it's actually help them to develop, examine their own teaching so that they can improve. And to stimulate, share the community of practice among teachers. So this is really the kind of idea of a PLC. And then by doing, putting the lesson studies at the center, everybody can learn and then stimulate each other. Everybody see that, wow, what might be a good lesson. This person do the very good lesson. Maybe we should be watching more and then learn from this. And then this is accumulating experience, accumulate the knowledge. And this knowledge and also the learning that they gain will help teachers to become a lifelong learners. So to become a lifelong learners, we need to help teachers to become interested in what they're teaching, interested in different way of teaching, and then they need to try to do research to improve that. So that's my end of the presentation, and hope that we have a good discussion later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yoshida, for so insightful and excellent talk. I think that this talk will connect to a real experience of our next presentation by Ms. Ishida. Thank you very much. And let us hope for good discussion post-conference. So I invite Ms. Ishida to deliver her talk. Eu convido a senhora Ishida para fazer a sua apresentação.
Hello everyone, I am Naomi Ishida. As Dr. Barrick introduced, I am originally from Japan, and I am implementing lesson study in an American school which is outside Japan. My slide, please.
Pode colocar os slides da senhora Ishida, por favor. Os slides dela também estão traduzidos e disponibilizados em português. Tá?
Dr. Yoshida talked about the lesson study in the US and how it was developed. Following Dr. Yoshida, I will present the case studies in the US and how the lesson study is implemented in an American school with teachers who are from different cultures than Japan. I am the founder of the Lesson Study Research Steering Committee at Rosalia Charter School, and I implemented the lesson study using my experience in Japan. The title is Mathematical Strategies, How to Tackle Problem Solving in an Urban Community Classroom. Next, please. Here is the presentation contents. Next, please. Rosalia Charter School. Next, please. Rosalia Charter School is located 16 blocks north of Manhattan in the Bronx, New York. The school serves 445 students in grade K-5 in the poorest democratic school district in New York City. 40.5% of our students are English language learners, and 15% of the students have special education accommodations. Next, please. Next, please. The school is located in an area where the students have the lowest education level in New York City. However, after 8 years, an outstanding result came that students are in the top 18% on the New York State math exams across the state. This is the results of the 2023 New York State math test. Before this school opened in 2015, only 16% of the students passed the New York State math exams in the district. Now, in the school, 71% of the grade 3 students scored proficient. 77% grade 4 students scored proficient. District 9 is a group in a city. Results overall were 36% and 32%. Compared with results from all New York City schools, my school students' results showed significant improvement. Next, please. This academic success has two main points. One is that the school has a strong math program using the Singapore math curriculum. Another main point is teacher professional development. This has three key factors: teacher-led professional development, lesson study, collaborative school-wide learning community, and long-time learner development of teaching skills. Next, please. Let's share how I established a school-wide teacher-led collaborative learning community for effective teaching of math lessons through lesson study. The lesson study community started in 2018 with a Japanese leader, I am. The reason for implementing lesson study was to give teachers more opportunities to understand the Singapore math curriculum that was new and to improve their teaching skills with the curriculum. Through implementing the lesson study professional development, teachers changed their level of understanding of the math curriculum and improved their math lessons. For example, the teachers began to pay attention to their hypotheses when they wrote lesson plans. When they started to create the lesson study research lesson proposals, they were not clear about what they wanted to research. However, they became aware of students' need to improve their understanding of math contents and therefore have a clearer vision to research their hypotheses. As a result, their teaching topics became clearer with each round of research lessons. Furthermore, implementing research lessons emphasizes students' math learning. Research lessons helped students develop higher order thinking. Students record their own ideas to help them with understanding, thinking processes, and misconceptions when solving math word problems. They became able to use a variety of math strategies, including pictures as visual representations, to show how to solve word problems. Next, please. Lesson study at Rosalia Rochero School as a school-wide community. Next, please. Oh, this is not the next one. Going back to 9, slide 9. Yes. So first, I will introduce how my school established the lesson study community that has been used about 8 years. In December 2017, 4 members of the school community, 2 administrators, and 2 classroom teachers traveled to Chicago to meet lesson study experts. They observed 3 lessons and joined their pre- and post discussions. They learned how to develop a collaborative school community and research lessons, This team created the first lesson study committee. Next, please. Each year, we developed a school-wide lesson study community and conducted research lessons based on our findings from our students in the daily math lessons. In the school year 2020, we taught 3 research lessons, although it was the COVID-19 pandemic year. We recorded the research lessons and shared with all teachers and discussed the lessons in a whole group discussion remotely. This way allowed us to continue to do lesson study in the school. Next, please. The research steering committee supported our school research lessons as follows. They created the pre-research used for developing research lesson plans. This led to the research lessons. The instructors of the research lessons were from the committee. Each member used their individual responsibility in the process during the research lesson day. The members facilitated the pre- and post-research lesson discussions together. To do this, they met regularly every week. The research steering committee has been working to involve the entire school community. They asked all teachers to survey and track their understanding about lesson study. Next, please. After several years, teachers changed their thinking about the lesson study. Here, the teachers in the school comment on the benefit of lesson study. I am leaving this PD with a lot more clarification on creating an appropriate lesson study lesson, taking every segment of the lesson into account to successfully engage our students. Alexa Stanley. I learned that as an educator in the classroom, it is important to observe and listen to students' feedback while they are trying to solve a math problem. Students have different ways of thinking and solving math problems. Also, student feedback allows for higher order thinking and accountable talk. Rosa Curis. I learned the different ways students think about mathematics. Students see multiple ways of solving a problem. Some students were comfortable thinking about the problem using addition, while some students found it easier to multiply. Next, please. This cycle shows how the staff members collaborate. We believe that lesson study develops lifelong learners as teachers become independent thinkers, problem solvers, and researchers. The research lesson cycle starts from research lesson planning. Kyōzai Kenkyu is investigating the teaching materials such as understanding of common course standards, math contents, and reading the articles related to the lesson. Understanding student levels and reasons for difficulties are also essential in research lesson planning. Teachers investigate the assessment results of past lessons and create research lessons pre-assessment to determine the current student's level. We usually use this process for 8 weeks. On the research lesson day, a representative teacher teaches the lesson. All others observe the lesson. The lesson is recorded for the discussion. Before the lesson, the research steering committee requests that the observers think about 4 questions during the lesson. A post-research lesson discussion is held. There are 2 parts to a post-lesson discussion. The first part is teachers' discussion led by the lesson study research steering committee. Teachers discuss the 4 questions introduced at the pre-research lesson discussion. This discussion is usually in a whole group discussion and a small group discussion. The second part involves knowledgeable others invited from outside the school, the school principal, or the director of Singapore Math, who gives advice. Based on the research lesson's outcome, The steering committee revises the research lesson plans and teaches the post-lesson. Then discuss the lesson study process to find the next steps. At the end of the cycle, the research steering committee summarizes the report. Next, please. This flow chart shows the structure of lesson study at my school. All participants focus on finding new ideas for how we can improve our teaching through research lessons. The members of the research steering committee support our school staff members. The academic leaders give advice to the teachers in the research lesson discussions. Next, please. Lesson study research lessons at Rosalia Charter School. Now I will move to the case studies. Next, please. Lesson study starts from identifying the problem. As an educational community, we found that our students struggled with problem-solving word problems first. Then the research starts to find why this is a problem in our learning community. Next, please. In lesson study, we emphasize a problem-solving approach teaching, where students are engaging in a productive struggle to arrive at a solution. The teacher's role is that of a facilitator to guide students' conversations. During these discussions, students will engage in talking about different entry points to solving a word problem. Next, please. We conducted 19 research lessons as a school-wide community. Each lesson is connected to the following lesson. For example, in kindergarten, we focused on students' ability to select the correct information to solve word problems. In first grade, the focus was on the ability to create a number sentence and use take apart situations in subtraction word problems. Next, please. Let's look at the connection. The hypothesis for the grade K lesson was here. If students are introduced to word problems at a very early age, up to the kindergarten level, along with the use of math journals and problem solving, they begin building the foundational skills necessary to understand relevant information to identify and solve the problems. The lesson overall gave students improvement. However, the outcome shows that they still struggled with making connections with the operations. Number sentences in a drawing. Some students used the operation of addition instead of subtraction. Crossed out some things in the picture when trying to solve the word problems. Based on this lesson's outcome, the hypothesis for the next grade 1 lesson was decided. If students made sense of word problems by representing accurate information in a problem situation through a number sentence, then they will become self-sufficient and critical mathematicians. All reasons are connected and developed. Lesson study now at Rosalia Charter School. We implemented the research lessons as a long-term teacher professional development. Now we have moved to the second term of the theme. Next, please. I will share our 18th research lesson. Our lesson study goes where? After teaching our 17 research lessons, we found the results as follow. In nationwide, it has been discovered that the pandemic has erased 2 decades of progress in math. After getting back to the classroom math instruction, students had a gap between their grade level and the math learning. To address misconceptions of students when solving word problems, foundational understanding of math concepts are necessary. As a result, A shift from word problem-based research to an emphasis on conceptual understanding provides students an opportunity to gain mastery of mathematical skills before responding to grade-level word problems. Next, please. Grade 3 lesson. The title is Using Number Lines to Determine and Understand Fractions are Number. Next, please. According to the 2022-2023 data at Rosario Charter School, we noticed the fractions unit is difficult, so we need more lessons across grades. Upon instruction of fractions, second graders were 39% proficient. Third graders were 58.8% proficient. Fourth graders were 62.5% proficient. And fifth graders were 25.7% proficient. All grades fell below the school-wide standard of proficiency, which is 77%. Second grade serves as an introduction to fractions, while third grade develops the concept of visually representing fractions. It makes connections between numeric and visual representations of fractions. Next, please. Students were given 5 fraction-related questions ranging in difficulty. We created a progression of fractional understanding from identifying fractional parts and concluding with the target concept of placing fractions on a number line. The first question asked the student to shade in fractional parts. 96% students demonstrated proficiency on this question. Question 2 asked the student to identify figures that showed 1/2, with 73% of students being able to do so. The third question asked the students to identify figures that shows 1/4, 19/26, or 73% students answered correctly. The fourth question, which asked the student to write the missing fraction on a number line, showed a minimal proficiency at 15%. The last question, the target question, asked the students to identify 3 fractional parts between 0 and 1. This question presented the most misconceptions, with only one student, 4%, correctly labeling the fractional parts. We found that question 5 was the most complex and had misconceptions. Students do not recognize that the whole number line is broken into 4 equal parts, so that after 0, there are 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4 that amount to the whole or 1. They do not see that 4 is the short represented by the denominator. They also do not see the numerators or parts to the whole that follow in sequence. The misconception across the grade level was that students lacked familiarity with creating the labeling number lines. This led to misconceptions and no standardized and consistent approach to creating and labeling their lines. We expect that recognizing a number line as another form of a fraction, like a visual model, will allow students to succeed more readily with these kinds of questions. Next, please. Our long-term goals of the lesson are to develop students' use of prior knowledge to identify fractional parts on a number line. Students can extend their knowledge beyond one whole. Eventually, students will manipulate fractions to perform the 4 operations by cultivating an understanding of fractions as points on a number line. By activating prior knowledge through engagement, students-led and teacher-facilitated discussions will address misconceptions surrounding placing fractions on a number line. Next, please. This is the hypothesis of the grade 3 lesson. If students are able to use their knowledge of whole numbers on a number line, then students will be able to identify fractional parts between 0 and 1 on a number line. Next, please. First, students engaged with a familiar number line. The number contained whole numbers from 0 to 3, and the students were asked what the point on the number line represented. Students shared their responses, displaying no prior misconceptions related to number lines. Additionally, students explained how they've used number lines in the past and why a number line is a valuable visual strategy. Students stated that values increased as a number line progressed and that the values in between whole numbers could exist. This defined those values as fractions, adequately setting up the lesson to follow. Next, please. The task was presented, understanding fractions as numbers on a number line. The problem followed, asking students to identify a point on the number line between 0 and 1. As mentioned earlier, students already knew that this point had to be a fraction because their value fell between two whole numbers. Students were then asked what ideas can we use to solve the problem. They pulled from their prior knowledge and that of their classmates to develop a list of strategies they could use. With no explicit prompting from the teacher, students stated the number line, bar model, and the fraction strips as visual strategies. In order to find the denominator, students knew to count the total number of equal parts between the whole numbers by referring to previous lessons in their notebooks. Similarly, students referred to their notebooks to assign a value to the numerator of each tick mark. Given their understanding that a number line progresses, students knew that the numerator would increase by 1. After independent problem-solving time, 3 students came up to share their strategies. Friends 1 and friend 2 chose to solve using a bar model. Friend 3 relied on counting and marking each jump she made from point to point. Originally, friend 1 counted beyond 1 hole, which made her denominator 7 instead of 6. Total equal parts during discussion time. Other classmates cleared her misconception by reminding her that equal parts are between whole numbers and the space in between 1 and the arrow does not contribute to the total number of equal parts. Friend 2 used a bar model that paralleled the number line. She could correctly identify numerators and denominators, but she did not shade in her bar model to represent the target fraction, which served as a false representation of the point on the number line. Friend 3 had no misconceptions. She used marking on the number line to find her answer. When friend 1 presented difficulties, friend 3 helped with her corrections and led her to the correct answer. To conclude the lesson, students developed their key point, or the main idea of the lesson, and reflected on it. Annalise shared that she enjoyed learning about fractions, and she looked forward to learning more. Their knowledge was assessed using an exit ticket consisting of 3 questions, but one student earned a perfect score reflecting the lesson's success. Next, please. Students are now able to use number lines as tools to identify fractional parts of a whole. They can extend their number line beyond one whole and begin to experiment with mixed numbers and improper fractions. Additionally, students can use the number line to add, subtract, and compare fractions. After this lesson, students will apply their understanding of fractions on a number line as a familiar strategy to solve problems involving multiplying fractions in grade 4. Next, please. Teachers' results. Teachers should first introduce whole numbers on a number line to encourage students to see that numbers exist between whole numbers. Additionally, students begin working with number lines early in their learning of mathematics. Therefore, presenting new concepts with familiar strategies builds confidence in students to solve independently. Once students have an initial understanding of fractions as numbers on a number line, teachers can expand thinking by incorporating concepts like equivalent fractions, comparing fractions, improper fractions, and more. Next, please. Here is the outcomes from the third grade lesson. Students were able to develop an understanding of fractions as numbers on a number line by using the number line as an instruction aid to broaden the concept of fractions beyond the more general part whole representation of fractions. Students showed that they knew a number line can be used for more than one concept, and they interpreted the number line as one whole. So they recognized that check marks between 0 and 1 represent fractions. To expand their thinking beyond the research lesson, students will be able to follow rules of equal partitioning so they can more easily comprehend and visualize fractions beyond one whole without teacher support. Next, please. As a result of the grade 3 fraction research lesson, teachers uncovered a need to build conceptual knowledge through visualized representations. To do so, students need to be exposed to a multitude of strategies in order to apply a strategy that best fits their understanding. Our proposed grade 3 area of composite figure research lesson took place in the following research lesson, targeted the same student that participated in the grade 3 fraction research lesson. Similar to fractions, geometry required students to have an understanding of visual models. Therefore, by taking our research from the fraction lesson, we could build a continuum of manipulating simple figures. Next, please. What supports our school lesson study success? Next, please. During the research lesson, we pick 3 students from each of high, middle, and low-level groups, track their work. A recorder observes one student's work for entire lesson and records on the recording sheet. The purpose of this is to find better supportive ways in different situations developing depending on the student's level. Next, please. Post-discussion happens after the research lesson. The purpose is for the teachers to share what they observed at the lesson and to bring insight into what they have observed. Teachers are also to discuss implementing new learning into their teaching practice. An expert also shares insight during post-discussion. Post-discussion questions are made before the research lesson based on the research theme. Discussion questions help the teachers who observed the lesson reflect on the important points of the lesson. Next, please. This is a grade 3 post-discussion questions. The lesson study steering committee facilitated and read it. First, the teacher who taught the research lesson shared her reflection. Then each participant wrote their answers to the 4 questions. Afterward, participants exchanged their ideas and answers to the questions in groups. The chairperson from the steering committee in each group facilitated the discussion. After that, the whole group discussion started with a report of the 3 target students, and then moved to the discussion of 4 post-discussion questions with all participants. Next, please. These are the answers to the 4 questions that the teachers discussed and the steering committee summarized. Next, please. The lesson study committee met after the research lesson day to summarize the lesson outcome based on the post-discussion. They found the following steps to lead the entire school lesson study for moving forward. Next, please. From the research lessons, students' result, I introduced this earlier in this presentation. Next, please. Teachers' results. I introduced this earlier in this presentation. Next, please. This is my school's lesson study theme for the school year 2023 to 2025 research lessons. After 8 years of developing the lesson study school-wide committee with American teachers, we concluded that lesson study effectively works in a different country's culture if we understand the principles of lesson study and follow the correct directions. Next, please. This video shows what educators said about lesson study at Rosalinda Rochella School. Please start the video. Shall I share from my PowerPoint?
Jorge, pode colocar o vídeo? É um vídeo bastante curto, mas é um depoimento do professor da Rosalind Yellow Charter School.
I will be able to share from my video, from my slide.
You might open.
Okay, can I?
Can you share? Yeah. But we are all already at the end. Can you?
Yes, I can. Yeah. I can do. Hold on.
Use the presenting device.
Yeah. Do you see the slide?
Yes, we are seeing the slide, but not the video.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about the lesson study professional development at Rosalind Yago Charter School. I really believe lesson study is an excellent way to improve teachers' learning and teaching skills in math. One important element in our study group is collaboration among all participants. One of our aims in lesson study is to continuously and consistently engage in researching and studying methods, strategies, and models. So through this collaboration, teachers come together to share these findings and apply them in their teaching plans. As a participant of the lesson study group here at Rosalind Yellow Charter School, I am able to learn new teaching strategies to improve my teaching skills in mathematics. It also helped me to look at student work in a different way. There is always room for improvement in teaching mathematics, and lesson study, without any doubts, serves this purpose. Thus, I recommend lesson study to everyone. That means new teachers and experienced teachers who want to help students become successful in mathematics. In conclusion, both teachers and students benefit immensely from this professional development as they continue to acquire better understanding and better math skills to achieve their goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My presentation ends now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ishida, for a wonderful talk, for sharing your experience. Pessoal, muito obrigado aos apresentadores. E agora nós passamos para a parte de perguntas. Now we start the question and answer session, okay? So the first question is, I think that you can follow from the chat in the right side of the screen of our StreamYard, but I will talk about. It's for both of you. Of the aspects of school culture and teacher training in the United States, which do you believe has imposed the most resistance to lesson study? How have you acted to overcome it? Start with Dr. Makoto.
Well, I think that circumstances really contributing big things. It's in the U.S. Its culture become more like a test score. So that a lot of administrators are becoming manager of helping kids school to pass the higher test scores, not really like thinking about the long-term educating teachers and students. And so that kind of a culture is particularly started when the policy is made by having a standard testing from 3rd grade to 8th grade, and then 1 year in the high school. The other one is the accountability. So the teacher is really measured by the student performance. And so because of that, the schools are also rated, and also the teachers are rated by the test scores. And also the states often make the schedule that, okay, for this test, this contents will be the major part of it, and then the other contents are not, secondary. And then those are really like a bad policy that are not helping teachers to do lesson study, because it's more focusing on teach the textbook for the passing a test, not teach for deeper understanding and then develop students' 21st century skills. Because not all the students become a mathematics teacher, and they need to actually develop through teaching mathematics or learning mathematics, they need to develop a logical thinking, creative ideas, or listen to others and then generalize ideas. And all of that is actually, I believe, very important in the math education. So one more thing is the lesson study is, unfortunately, we don't have a knowledgeable people who can lead the school. So the case in the Naomi's school, she is knowledgeable person who can be the lead lesson study, but many other places are not. And when even they have a good leaders, when they retired or principal change, and then everything changes, so that they are not be able to continue the process. That's a very unfortunate circumstances.
Thank you. Before Naomi's answer to this question, I'd like to translate it, to summarize what Dr. Makoto said in Portuguese.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay, it's okay. But I should do the mediation for the audience. Então, a pergunta é quais são os fatores que estão impedindo, né, que impôs mais resistência ao Lesson Study. E o Dr. Makoto falou que a mudança da política do governo, da política educacional de colocar o teste, né? Então, a escola é ranqueada pelas notas que aparecem nas provas, do tipo nosso, de SAEB e tudo. Então, os professores, eles começam a entender que a aula deles precisa estar voltada para a performance dos estudantes. E isso acaba com um dos princípios de ensinar a matemática, os princípios da Lesson Study, de entender a compreensão conceitual da matemática para conseguir mais nota, né? Aqui aparece a aprovação. Mas isso acaba tirando o tempo dos professores, que começam a mudar as lições para que os seus alunos se voltem para a nota das provas. E na prova, os professores ficam atentos o que cai mais e o que é colocado em segundo plano. Então, aquele que vai para segundo plano não ensinam. Então, essa é uma grande dificuldade. E algumas das atitudes que o pessoal do Lesson Study está tomando é formar os grupos de estudo, e o exemplo da escola da Naomi Ishida é um exemplo. Mas, para isso, precisa de mais especialistas que compreendem perfeitamente o objetivo da Lesson Study, aquele knowledge about others, certo? Os especialistas para liderar. E essa é uma grande dificuldade, que são poucos, porque quando muda o diretor, quando muda o coordenador pedagógico, quando muda o corpo docente, e a pessoa que é especialista se aposenta, quando se aposenta, aí muda e atrasa os projetos. Em suma, é isso. Desculpa pela tradução meio apressada, mas esse é o ponto. Next, for Ms. Ishida to answer to this question.
Yes. So I really agree with Dr. Yoshida that he talked. My school is doing New York State math exam today. I'm here with you. So American school focus on taking the test. That is true. And then for me, as a person who worked in both countries, in Japan and in the United States with the teachers, what is the most resistant point is way of thinking about teaching is different between the countries. So when we teach math lessons, we think about this is the teacher's responsibility. If students cannot understand the concept, this is, I need to do something. I need to support if I am a teacher there in the lesson. But on the other hand, the American education system, most of the schools, teachers are thinking, if students cannot understand, this is the student's fault. So that when the time comes, the school year ends. We don't need to finish all the math textbooks or the curriculum because my students were difficult to understand. So lesson study is opposite. Teachers read professional development so that the teachers need to learn and the teachers need to improve their teaching skills. So way of thinking, it's very different. So I studied in my school 10 years ago. I came to the United States 20 years ago, but developing the lesson study 8 years. I brought this to the school because I wanted to change the way of thinking in the school. So this is the first thing when we teach the lessons. And Dr. Yoshida talked also, school system is very different, knowledgeable people, and who can't maintain the lesson study in the school is very limited. So that also teachers, I gave professional development for 8 years, but the teachers changed to move to the school very quickly. Their way of thinking does not have lifelong learners of teaching. I don't say everybody, but it's in the process to think, to change the way of thinking now. Thank you.
Então, o que a professora Ishida falou, acrescentando à posição do Dr. Makoto Yoshida, é que realmente nos Estados Unidos o ensino da matemática nas escolas está voltado para testes. Então, o resultado do teste acaba dirigindo as lições, né? As classes. E uma das coisas que a professora Ishida falou, que é muito importante, é que a diferença entre o Japão e os Estados Unidos é a consciência, é o reconhecimento profissional do professor. No Japão, quando o aluno vai mal nas provas ou vai mal nos exames, o professor toma para si a responsabilidade. Eu tenho que melhorar as minhas aulas. Eu tenho que ensinar para que o aluno aprenda. Enquanto que nos Estados Unidos, eu estou dando a minha aula. Se o aluno foi mal, a culpa é do aluno. Então, se no final do ano letivo você não consegue cumprir o currículo, é por causa que os alunos são fracos, porque eles não têm a capacidade para aprender. Então, essa diferença é uma coisa muito grande que impede a lesson study de proliferar, de florescer nas escolas. E também a mudança dos professores, né? O professor sai, eles não encaram a lesson study como sendo uma oportunidade para aprendizagem contínua. Eles entendem, então, a lesson study como sendo um processo que acabou, e não é para o seu próprio desenvolvimento. Então, é mais ou menos isso que a professora Ishida falou. Ela falou mais outras coisas, mas a essência é isso. Mas na experiência dela, quando ela trouxe para a lesson study, a experiência dela, há 8 anos ela está tentando mudar, partindo do estado de... é a metacognição mesmo, né? É o reconhecimento do professor para entender o valor da lesson study, para seu próprio desenvolvimento profissional. Agora, now the next question is, how has lesson study contributed to the development of individual and collective actions among basic education students that favor their mathematical learning? Which ones in your studies have shown the most promise for increasing the percentage growth of correct answers presented? We'll start with Dr. Yoshida.
Okay. Over 25 years, I worked with many schools, but I wasn't really in the particular school. So it is very hard to say, but the best one that I worked with was from 2000 to 2005. It's called the Patterson School number 2 in New Jersey. And that school actually developed their school-based lesson study model. They have leaders and also facilitators. And then also they had knowledgeable others, which was Japanese school teachers in the New York City. So the test score went up, and and then also the students were eager to learn mathematics. They are very interested in presenting their own ideas. They were very interested in discussing ideas. And then that was really something that we wanted to showcase. That's why we also did the open houses to educate other schools. However, although this school is actually achieved higher test scores, but the district didn't really like that. So this school was nationally in the United States, very famous school. But in the district, they didn't like this school. And so when the principal retired and then the facilitator retired from the school, then it's no longer there. So it's very unfortunate, like this like a policy or will really destroy the culture, and then I think it's really going back to my presentation. Very important one is the knowledgeable person is important to help teachers understand what they need to be doing and through lesson study to achieve, and then collaboration with the administrator, and then that's need to be support. And also I said that it's very important to remind ourselves that the changing takes a longer time. It's not easy, because I did the lesson study once as a project. Doesn't mean that you can change you have to really adapt to that. Is a way of improving as a system. And and in the US case, there are a lot of things that it's very difficult to run lesson study, but it's been 25 years. People knows about it. So it is a time to revisit and then try to revive it.
Thank you very much. Então, o Dr. Yoshida disse que ele, como pesquisador, ele não é exatamente professor, ele não tem tanta experiência de ser professor na sala de aula, mas de 2000 até 2005, ele esteve trabalhando numa escola, digamos, modelo para introduzir a Lesson Study. E ele acha que a Lesson Study é uma coisa que é um processo que demora tempo para você entender e instalar. Então, não é de noite para dia que você consegue mudar o pensamento. E o que aconteceu no modelo que ele acha que leva para o sucesso da Lesson Study é que a escola toda tem que ser engajada. Então, ter o comitê, ter a escola toda participando. Então, nesse caso de sucesso que ele diz, de 2000 a 2005, existe a escola Patterson, em que eles conseguiram assim, melhorar as notas deles, maravilha. Mas aí, o que acontece? Quem estava liderando era professor japonês, conhecedor do método japonês, e envolveu a escola como um todo. Então, quando o projeto de Lesson Study não é de um professor, mas da escola toda, você começa a montar a comunidade de aprendizagem numa escola. E isso é muito importante. Então, quando o diretor... e o que aconteceu nessa escola Patterson? Eles foram um dos melhores dos Estados Unidos, mas isso não agradou a sua região, o seu estado. Então, eles se isolaram, apenas com a nota deles que melhoraram, apesar do exemplo. E uma coisa que é muito importante para o sucesso da Lesson Study é que tenha especialista fora da escola que dê apoio e apoia a ação dos professores dentro da escola para seu progresso, para o desenvolvimento profissional. Então, é isso que ele está querendo dizer, que agora ele acha que está no momento, com todo esse movimento de Lesson Study, está no momento de revisitar e compreender melhor o que é a Lesson Study como um processo, que é um processo que demora tempo para instalar. E exemplos como da professora Ishida, de liderar um grupo, em cima dos princípios da Lesson Study, é uma coisa muito importante, mas que leva tempo. Muito obrigada. Oh, well, now is Ishida-san.
Yes. Thank you so much. Dr. Yoshida talked overall, and I totally agree. And I will add a little bit. When I started working in Japan, lesson study existed naturally and mandatory, so that I have no doubting to do lesson study as a professional development. But in the United States, Dr. Yoshida talked for 25 years we spend, and it takes time, of course. And first the teachers change and then implementing lesson study. Then our goal is our students understanding math. So first the teachers here and the lesson study, and then going down to the students underneath, students are learning math to change the students' understanding level and then meet the goal of students learning. So it takes more and more time, so that we have a long term project to do lesson study. But I'm pretty sure it works well, and our direction is correct at doing.
Então, eu gostaria de sumarizar, porque o que a professora Ishida falou é bem, ela concorda com a posição do Dr. Yoshida, então não precisa repetir. Mas o que ela quis dizer de mais importante na fala dela agora, para responder, é que quando ela começou a carreira dela no Japão, a Lesson Study já faz parte da educação continuada e da tarefa do professor. Então, ela não teve dúvidas em fazer a Lesson Study, porque já é natural no Japão. Quando ela chegou nos Estados Unidos, não. Ela tinha que começar trabalhando com os professores para quem a Lesson Study era uma coisa estranha, não é? Então, ela percebe muito essa diferença de posição pessoal mesmo, né, do professor em relação à Lesson Study como processo, e precisa de paciência para entender todo o processo e aplicar. I'd like to move forward because we have a very interesting problem for both of you. Professor Makoto and Naomi, thank you very much for your speeches. What problem-solving model do you adopt with teachers and students?
Yes.
Can you summarize a very short answer?
石田さん、どうですか、先に。
Hi. My school is using problem-solving approach lesson. And then we are doing supporting teachers to understand the students' level of understanding and creating lesson plans each week. Yes, I adapted. It's successfully they are doing now.
Então, a professora Ishida diz que adota o modelo de abordagem o ensino através de problemas, mas isso através de problematizar desde o planejamento de aulas para desenvolver o pensamento do aluno nos passos da resolução de problemas. And you, Dr. Yoshida?
So the to-do list, adapting problem-solving approach of teaching is just like I said at the beginning, you have to have a vision. If it's very important to students to learn each other, this Vygotsky's idea, learn each other, influence each other, learn better. And if that's very important, and then naturally this problem-solving approach is goes with the lesson. The other thing is this is something that I did was translated Japanese textbook to the for the U.S. audience, and then so the textbook itself is in Japan made for teaching problem solving, and American textbook, if you do look at this, it's actually teach and then learn. And so it's not really developed as a professional, the problem-solving approach of teaching. So those materials are very helpful. Actually, I'm working with in Brazil and making the textbook for Brazil students. And but I think it's very important to have a textbook that is actually help you to do it or understand problem solving, as well as maybe see more lessons that is actually engaged in problem solving. Otherwise, it's very difficult for teachers to change from teaching to the student-centered teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Então, resumindo o que o professor Yoshida falou, que ele adapta sim, ele precisa adaptar, mas a abordagem para a resolução de problemas dentro da Lesson Study para ele utiliza aquele princípio do Vygotsky, de que as crianças se engajam e a comunicação deles, eles aprendem através da discussão, de comunicar suas próprias ideias. Então, uma das coisas que ele levanta é a necessidade de você fazer a pesquisa e de uso de livros, textos didáticos. Só que no texto didático não é para transposição exatamente do que está escrito dentro, mas é que elaborar as lições em cima do livro didático voltado para a aprendizagem dos alunos. Então, pensar nos alunos e ter a visão das metas de educação matemática é uma coisa muito importante para você adaptar. Não é um processo da adaptação que faz o milagre. A Lesson Study faz com que a abordagem de resolução de problemas seja vivenciada através dos alunos, do engajamento dos alunos para desenvolver o pensamento matemático. Em suma, é isso. Aí ele diz que ele tem os livros agora escritos em português, sendo traduzidos em português, cujo manual para professor é para orientar como utilizar esse material para elaborar as lições. Mas não é copiar a lição, porque quando você faz o plano de lições, de aulas, você tem que pesquisar. Então, é nesse sentido que torna o professor pesquisador da prática, e para isso utiliza o livro-texto como um guia. Essa é uma parte importante que ele quis dizer. Então, ele tem livros traduzidos, e agora ele já está produzindo de 3º ao 5º ano, que ele já tem do primeiro, do pré até o 2º ano, certo? So, we have 2 more minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. I have here the next question. How long did it take the teachers to master the process? It was 6 months. It's written here in the chat. In Brazil, several schools are at the same level as the Rosarian School, with low proficiency in mathematics. I really liked the approach of the research class, Ishida-san. How long did it take the teachers to master this process? Would this be a minimum time to master the techniques, taking into account the difference in the level of teachers we have in activity? I think that it is better for Ishida-san to answer.
Yes, so we showed the kind of result that I showed, the state exam results. We increased 77%, and it was remarkable overall top 18% of the state schools. It was 4 years later it started. So we took it to understand the teachers' level of teaching and the increasing teaching skills, and then students change overall 4 years, and then now it's 8 years. So first 4 years after starting lesson study, we met the results, and then we maintain and increasing now. Did I answer the question?
Yes. Então, ela está dizendo que está levando 8 anos para a escola dela. Nos primeiros 4 anos é para entender o processo, para que os professores consigam entender o valor e aprender a planificar, né? a planejar a aula, e depois fazer as primeiras research lessons, né? As aulas de pesquisa, e depois começar a melhorar. Então, está melhorando nos últimos 4 anos. São 8 anos no total e ainda está em processo.
私がちょっとだけ加えていいですか？
はい。
一つ重要なのは、授業研究をやって1年例えばしたら、必ずそれを振り返る。So that you have to, if you do the lesson study, you have to revisit and reflect on, and then thinking about the next year's plan. And that's very important. It's not just to continue to do, and then you will improve. You have to always implement, reflect, and then make the plan and then do this. And that's very important. The other thing that I want to also highlight is the Naomi's school. It's not just for lesson study, but they did other things, which is like developing student basic skills, the fluency of addition, multiplication. Those are very important. So it's not just a lesson study to change the student learning, but there are other things. Like if you teach the addition, you have to make sure the kids be able to do that. And then in that way, you have to practice or think about the best way to practice. And then that's very important. I don't know the case in the Brazil, but if the students are weak in the basic skills, well, think about the best way to teach them, and as well as make sure that the kids develop those skills when they learn. And then that will become the good base to do start doing the problem solving type of approach of teaching.
Então, o que o professor Yoshida quer trazer aqui como muito importante é que a lesson study escapou um pouquinho aqui, que não é uma coisa assim que você faz um contínuo, você vai fazendo a lesson study, vai melhorando, é que depois de um ciclo de lesson study, um ano, você precisa revisitar. Você precisa fazer uma reflexão sobre se os objetivos iniciais foram atingidos, se não foram atingidos, o que precisa melhorar, o que aprendeu com isso, certo? Para partir para o próximo. Então, sempre olhar para o que foi realizado e avaliar. Avaliar o que foi feito em cada ciclo é muito importante. E também a aquisição de práticas e habilidades concretas, como de adição, de subtração, de operações, ou seja, aulas de treinamento. Então, quais seriam as aulas? A melhor forma de treinar também faz parte da aquisição de competências para o século XXI, que não é somente melhorar a aprendizagem, não é somente melhorar a comunicação entre os alunos, mas realmente saber que os alunos estão avançando na aquisição de competências básicas, habilidades básicas, porque senão a resolução de problemas, abordagem por resolução de problemas não avança. Então, são coisas muito importantes que a gente não pode esquecer. É isso que eu queria dizer. So, for the panelists, to what extent has the lesson study impacted the development of mathematical and scientific thinking in Latin American countries? If you know anything about this development, please share.
In Latin America? No, I haven't had a experience with working with the school, except one school in Brazil. That we are making a transition to do lesson study. We haven't started. Last year, we focused on the developing student basic skills and thinking about the best way to help students to develop basic skills like addition and multiplication. The other thing that I did with this school was working, helping teachers to understand the big idea of teaching certain topics, for instance, fractions or number and number sense, something like that. So you developing a knowledge. The other thing is I and my colleague is developing a textbook for the Brazilian students. And
I'm sorry, we are running out of time.
Okay,
The organizers must close. So please, in the name of the organization, I thank you, both of you, for wonderful roundtable discussion. It was precious. And I'd like to ask you to stay on stage for the photo taking. And I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much all.
Thank you so much.
Muito obrigado, pessoal, audiência. Desculpe passar da hora. Vamos tirar a foto e estou encerrando. We're closing this round table number 4. Thank you very much.
Obrigado.
Thank you so much. ありがとうございました。
こちらこそ。